Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli back out here in the shop, and we've got a really good one for you today. In fact, an entire series, 4-part series on a lure, technique, terminal tackle style that is changing the way we fish. And we're going to be talking about the Tokyo rig. The Tokyo rig. Some of you also know this as a leadered punch shot rig, but now after about 3 or 4 years of this thing being on the market, guys know it as the Tokyo rig. And over this 4-part series, we're going to look at 4 different ways to fish the Tokyo rig. Before we get into method number 1, let me give you some generals on what a Tokyo rig is. And let's look at this system real quick, okay? The first thing is it's a barrel swivel. We've got a small, just a black barrel swivel. And that's what your line attaches to, okay? So there's our barrel swivel. Below that barrel swivel is a welded O-ring, right? An O-ring with no openings. It's welded. It's a closed eye or welded O-ring. On that O-ring is the hook. And over this series, we're going to look at 4 different hook styles for different presentations. And then on that same welded O-ring, we have a wire down leader. A wire leader that is open on the end. And that wire leader out of the pack, if you look at it, it's about 3 inches long. And on that wire leader, we're going to add or remove and add and remove different style weights. And we're going to see that over the 4-part series. We're going to see that you could use different weight sizes. And when you look at that, it's sort of an interesting looking contraption. And you say, what are the benefits of a Tokyo rig, this style of rigging, versus Texas rig or jig head rigs, right? What's the benefit? So I want to show you a few real quick, and then we're going to get into this first part, which is flipping and punching with the Tokyo rig, okay? So number 1 benefit of the Tokyo rig versus a jig head or a regular Texas style rigging, right, is action. And I want you to just look at that. Because you're tying on a barrel swivel, because this is on an O-ring, it has freedom of movement. 360 degree, right? Look at this. Look, I'm just twisting the bait around 360 degrees, up, down, side to side. And as that bait shakes or swims or we shake our rod tip, look at that fluidity of movement, right? So on a jig head rig or a Texas rig where that weight is fixed to the bait, it's much more stiff, right? There's a lot less movement. It falls, it hits, it's all connected in one piece. But in Tokyo rigging, that O-ring and hook is fluid. It's not impeded by a weight or even a knot, right? The knot's up here. So number 1 reason why a Tokyo rig: improved action, better action. Second benefit is getting the weight away from the bait. And over this 4-part series, in each of them, you're going to see the benefit of separating the weight from the bait, getting the weight away from the bait, right? In jig head rigging or Texas rigging, that weight is attached to the bait. That weight and hook are one piece. But when we get the weight away from the bait, we're going to have a lot better action. We're going to have a lot better movement. This bait is going to be protected. This bait is going to be away from the abuse of the weight, right? Think about that. You're dragging it through slop, rocks, shells, zebra mussels, pea gravel, docks, sharp metal. The weight and that wire takes all the abuse, right? Your knot and the bait is away from the abuse, right? So a lot better movement, a lot better ability to not break off, to stay out of the sharp stuff. Last but not least, a great reason to get that weight away from the bait. Another benefit of the Tokyo rig. You ready for this one? It's a big one. Increased hookup percentage. Increased hookup percentage. I want you to think about that, right? Let's go back to that Texas rig bait where the weight is attached to the bait. Texas rigged, you know, 1/4 ounce, 1/2 ounce, 1 ounce, or even a jig head, right? A rugby, a swinging rugby head, a jig head, a ball head. The weight is attached to the hook. And when you set the hook, when that weight and hook are one piece, the fish eats it. He eats the bait and the weight. When you set the hook, it's like a bullet. It's like that force of your hook set pries that fish's mouth back open, right? Think about that. Look, you set the hook, the fish ate it, it's one piece. You set the hook, that force of that pries the fish's mouth open, and you miss a lot of bites. I'd like to tell you that this Tokyo rig is going to catch you 20% more fish. Those bites that you miss, right? They hit that Texas rig, swim off of it, you jack it, and you just feel, boom. You feel like it's on for a second, and you woof it. That's because you blew it out of his mouth. But with the Tokyo rig, because the weight is separate from the bait, look at it, the weight's on the bottom. When they eat this bait, they just eat the bait. The weight's at the bottom. When you set the hook, there's no jig head or pegged bullet weight to blow through their mouth. That weight's on the bottom. Increased hookup percentage, okay? So a lot of great reasons to fish the Tokyo rig. And let's start now with this first method. And the first one is flipping and pitching heavy cover. And this is the original method that I learned when I went to Japan about 7 or 8 years ago. This is the original method that I learned on how to fish the Tokyo rig. All right, I actually want to break one out of the pack, and we're going to show you the entire process. This is the VMC Tokyo rig heavy duty flipping hook, okay? So this is the same flipping hook you would use for pitching, flipping, punching. This is a heavy cover hook, okay? And that's how we're going to use it. Okay, so we're going to take that thing out of the pack. There we go. We've got our, this happens to be a 3/0 VMC heavy duty flipping hook. Look at it, heavy gauge. It's that same one with the opposing keeper barbs, epoxy keeper barbs. But once again, it's Tokyo rig. So there's our little barrel swivel, welded O-ring, and our open wire. And on this one, this is where we're going to add the weight. And I want to show you how easy it is to add a weight. I've got a VMC 3/4 ounce tungsten weight. And on all these methods, you're going to see that in Tokyo rig weighting, you can use any kind of weight with a hole, lead, brass, but I prefer tungsten because of the feel. So this is a 3/4 ounce tungsten VMC flipping weight. And when I'm flipping or punching or pitching to thick heavy cover, when I get this worm weight, this bullet weight, could be from 1/8 of an ounce up to 2 ounces, I like to put it with the point down. So when I'm going to get that open wire, look at it, there's that 3-inch open wire. I'm going to push it through so that the point is facing down. Once it's on that wire, look at that, it's got side-to-side movement. All I'm going to do is get my pliers and I'm going to just make a little R bend in the top of that wire. Okay, so the wire's open. I'm going to get my pliers, and I'm just going to make just a little R bend. And I'll totally close it up and pinch it tight. And now when I do that, I've got my weight on there, and the weight is sliding. Look at that, it's sliding, but now it's fixed on there. The great thing about this for flipping is that as I encounter different thicknesses of cover, I can change that weight. All I got to do is get my pliers, open up that bend, go to a lighter weight for thinner cover, go to a heavier weight for thicker cover. I can change on the fly without ever retying the Tokyo rig. It's another great benefit to this. When I'm flipping or pitching, I use the same baits you would use when you're Texas rigging, right? So tubes, beaver style lures, creature baits. This is one of my favorites on the flipping style Tokyo rig. This is a Berkeley Power Bait Bunker Hog, and no different in rigging. It's your normal rigging style. So I'm going to go in that Bunker Hog about 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to pull it out. I'm going to go around those epoxy keepers. I'm going to take it all the way up to that O-ring. It's going to get snug at the top, and I'm going to make that nice straight bait for Texas rigging. All right, this is the first method we're going to use for Tokyo rigging, is heavy cover, punching, flipping, pitching. And look what this bait's going to do. Look at the design of that with that free-flowing weight. That weight is actually going to help you penetrate the cover, but let the bait be free. Think about how different and how much better that is than a fixed weight, right? Fixed weight hits that mat, and it's trying to get through, and the weight's hitting weeds, the weight's getting stuck, and so is the bait. But with this, look at it, it's like the ball and a chain. When it hits that heavy cover, grass, wood, matted sticks, brush, the weight punches through. Look at it. The weight punches through and creates a little opening for that bait. And it keeps the bait clean. How many times have you flipped in a mat with a Texas rigged beaver creature, and it goes through and it attaches to the weeds or the brush or the sticks? But not with a Tokyo rig. That weight is punching your hole and the bait's coming through clean instead of getting snagged up. So great benefit. And here's another benefit once you're through that heavy cover. You ready for this? The Tokyo rig in this style, flipping and pitching and punching, the weight is on the bottom, the bait is up top. Look at it. So when I get through that mat or that heavy cover or those brush piles or standing trees, look at the bait staying above the bottom. Even a drop shot couldn't do that, right? Because a drop shot, the down leader is just line. It's just braid or fluorocarbon. The bait hits the bottom, that line compresses on itself, the bait falls on the bottom. But in a Tokyo rig, with this flipping and pitching method, that wire's rigid. Look, it's rigid. It's hard. So when it goes through that heavy cover, hits the bottom, the weight's on the bottom, the bait is fluid off the bottom, out of the silt, out of the muck, out of the weeds, more visible to the fish with tremendous action, more than a Texas rig or a jig head, right? So big benefit when you're flipping and pitching to use a Tokyo rig. Better penetration, keeping it off the bottom, better action, and remember what I said, better hook sets, because the weight is on the bottom, you're flipping and pitching, 20-pound fluorocarbon, 65-pound braid. If that was attached to the head of that bait, Texas style, when you hit them hard, that weight blows out of the fish's mouth. But when you're flipping and pitching and punching and you hit them now, look, it's all hook. It's all hook and bait. That weight's on the bottom. The weight's not going to impede your hook set. 20% more bites in the boat. Real quick, let me end by talking about the tackle for this heavy-duty flipping, pitching, punching method for the Tokyo rig. Here's the great thing you're going to hear in this whole series about the tackle. You ready? It's the same exact tackle as you would use on a regular flipping and pitching and punching Texas rig setup. So you don't need specialized tackle. So generally when I'm using this heavy-duty hook and I'm flipping or pitching or punching heavy cover, I'm using that same rod, 7.5 to 8 foot, medium heavy to heavy action casting rod. I'm using 20 to 25 pound fluoro or 50 to 60 pound braid. The same stuff you would normally use, this is what you're going to use on the Tokyo rig, okay? So method number 1 is using the Tokyo rig in heavy cover situations. Punching, flipping, pitching, heavy cover, to use that Tokyo rig to have more action than a traditional setup. So try this one. Hang in there with us. Over the next 3 weeks, we're going to talk about 3 more ways to rig this Tokyo rig, and it's going to change the way you fish. It's different, unique action. Not a lot of guys are doing it. It's going to help you catch more fish. Listen to me, before you go, if you like what you're hearing, do me a favor, mash that button right down there, hit the subscribe button, subscribe to Mike Iaconelli Fishing on YouTube. We've got great educational content coming to you every single week. If you're already a subscriber, tell your fishing friends about the channel. We're going to help teach you new techniques and new lures every single week. Good luck, good fishing. Try that Tokyo rig when you're punching and flipping and pitching. You're going to get more fish. You're going to get more bites in the boat. See you later.